And welcome back to yet another Buffalo Bills pregame. Here we are together once again for the reason that we absolutely did not want to be, and that's because another divisional loss or another loss by the Bills in the divisional round of the playoffs. Looking back on the course of the season, it was a great time. Another divisional championship. We had the number two scoring offense in the league. It was a lot of fun to watch, but at the same time, we had the number two allowed defense in the league. Not a formula to win championships. We were plagued by injuries. There was bad weather that forced games to be moved out of from home here elsewhere. There were an injury that ended a game. There was up and down, entirely unpredictable season. Who could have seen all this coming? He's been with me every time we've been together. So we're going to start with Dan. Let's start off with focusing on the positive. Dan, what was the highlight of the season for you? When you look back, think back on the 2022 season, excuse me. What's going to be your favorite memories?
So I think the Bills have shown that they are going to be perennially, one of the top teams in the league. Obviously it seems right now, like in the AFC, it's Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, obviously not in that order. But those seem like they're the top three teams. They were last year, they are this year. And it seems like as long as we have Josh Allen, even though he had struggled a little bit this season, it seems like as long as we have Josh Allen, every year we're at least going to have a shot at the Super Bowl. So I think that's really important going forward to remember. Just to go from here, I think, we still have a Super Bowl window that is open. I do believe that.
Jared, well, same question to you. Looking back on the season, what do you think your highlight will be?
Ooh, the highlight. The highlight's the Baltimore game for sure. I traveled with Dan to the Baltimore game, and at halftime, I thought that game was over. We're down 17-0. That's it. Let's go home. It's raining. And they came back. I had never been to a game with a comeback like that. And yeah, awesome memory from the season.
See, my memory is also going to be personal. My highlight, rather, for the Dolphins game. I took Elijah my son, for his first game ever. It was a Bills victory. There was weather involved. It just checked a lot of boxes for being a night that I'll never forget. So, besides the disappointing end, there will be good things to take away from the 2022 season. It would seem that the offense excelled, thanks in large part to having one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The defense did struggle, thanks in no small part to a secondary that just could not stay healthy. The free agent pass rusher, their biggest signing, and Von Miller got injured down the stretch. So I'm going to start off with a question: which coordinator will likely be in Buffalo longer? Do you think? Do you think this season spells a sooner end for Dorsey as the offensive coordinator, or Frazier as the defensive coordinator? Jared, to you.
I think Dorsey goes before Frazier. Dorsey, I believe he either interviewed or is going to possibly interview for the Panthers. I haven't heard Frazier having any interviews yet. And like you said at the beginning of the video, they had the second highest score on defense. So that kind of hurts Frazier's chances of actually getting head coaching jobs. Plus, Frazier has also been a head coach in the past. So people already kind of know his history there. And Dorsey, is a brand new, let's see how hard he can slam those binders type of guy. And that gives people insight to wanting him on their team.
A lot of concern about Dorsey's lack of variety in play calling. Dan, do you feel the same way as Jared?
So I think that, it's going to be tough for both of those coaches. I think Dorsey doesn't have enough experience. I think he will interview for some head coaching positions. I don't know if he has the experience in order to, become a head coach. I could definitely be wrong about that. I think Frazier is going to be the first to go. Just because I think Dorsey, I feel like you want some, continuity when it comes to your offensive coordinator, especially with Josh Allen. You don't want him having three offensive coordinators in 3 years. So I think it's worth giving him another year just to see what he can do. In terms of Frazier, he's obviously a much more decorated coach around the league. Jared, like you said, he's been a head coach. He's been around the league. He did have I thought it was an odd game plan against the Bengals. I think both Dorsey and Frazier had an odd game plan. Neither of them seemed to work out. But I think they might need to shake some things up on defense. So that's why I think Frazier will be the first one to go.
But it doesn't sound like either of you think that either coordinator is on the hot seat quite yet. So let's try this one. Sean McDermott, you look around at the coaches that are left in the playoffs, and all of them came from an offensive background. They're all calling the plays for their own teams. We are probably the best team in the NFL with a coach that comes from a defensive background. But as a result, we have that lack of continuity that you were just mentioning with the offensive coordinator position. And that's not a problem that the Chiefs ever have to face because Andy Reid will be calling the plays no matter what. So is there a chance that we go to an offensive coordinator position, or Brandon Beane put together a team with Josh Allen, but he's not surrounding him with Pro Bowl draft picks by any chance. Defensive line that was filled with first and second round draft picks could not get any amount of pressure against Joe Burrow. Your free agent signing got injured. He has a history of getting injured. Your defensive backfield full of Pro Bowlers just could not stay healthy at all. Which one of between McDermott and Beane do we see being here at the franchise longer? Dan, I'll start with you on this
one. That's a really tough question. It seems like, excuse me. It seems like in the last few years, Beane has struggled a little bit when it has come to draft picks, and it seems like a lot of those defense, like you were mentioning, those defensive linemen, they haven't panned out how we kind of hoped they thought they were or thought they would. It seems like Ed Oliver was invisible almost, against the Bengals. It seems like he wasn't really having the impact we thought he would, especially with, the past couple regular seasons he's been having. In terms of who I think would go first in that situation, I think I would have to go with McDermott just because it is an offensive league and it is really good to have an offensive mind at head coach. With that being said, I think they both are safe in their positions. Just to compare, to what the Bills were before McDermott, I don't see them getting rid of him at this point. But if one of them was to go before the other, I would say that McDermott would go before Beane.
I feel like someone said about Norv Turner for like 6 years in a row. Jared, same question for you.
I don't think that question has an answer because Sean McDermott was basically responsible for bringing Brandon Beane to the Bills after McDermott was hired. So I don't see any actual reality scenario where Beane fires McDermott and they bring in a new coach under Beane. So if they ever decide to fire Brandon Beane, which seems far from now, that's when McDermott would get fired, in my opinion. I don't see them. I see both getting fired or both staying.
Package deal, but you don't see it being imminent either.
Who's that to? Me or Dan? Sorry.
No, sorry. No, I'm still talking to you, Jared. You don't see it being an imminent. You're looking to get rid of McDermott or Beane anytime soon.
No, I mean, I actually listened to the Brandon Beane, and maybe I'm biased because I just got done listening to the Brandon Beane press conference today. As he reminded us, 12 times they won 13 games this year. They did a lot of things that most teams don't do. They didn't make it to where we all wanted them to go. And trust me, I'm probably more disappointed than the average fan in the season that, no AFC championship game, no Super Bowl. These are things we've accomplished. And so unfortunately this season wasn't as fun as it's your average Bill season because we're so used to winning, now winning isn't as fun anymore. Sadly, we're sad by spoiled. Winning the AFC championship would have been fun. Super Bowl would have been fun. Being number one seed would have been fun. But they've still done things. They're still a really good team. They're still in the ballpark of competitiveness. And I don't think that you have this great coaching matchup that works really good with your GM. I don't think you take that away now when we're still there. If we have like 2 or 3 seasons of, like 7 and 9, Randy, like you used to love, or 7 and 10 now, I guess. Then I think that's when they would actually be like, okay, these guys, they don't got it, they're out. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. I really
All right,
don't.
so not the coordinators, not the GM or the or Brandon Beane. Then where did the team fall short? Then Jared, we'll stay with you. What was the shortcoming of the Bills?
It's hard to define it. Like, I think lots of, like you mentioned earlier, Randy, lots of circumstances happened. I'm not trying to say there's no blame or anything. I don't know what happened with the Miami or the Bengals playoff games. Both games were bad. If Tua starts that Miami game, we lose. Um, it's an undefined question, Randy. I'm not even sure because like I read somewhere today that said, oh, they just ran out of gas by the time that game came around. And it's like, well, I think the problem is something I just said before. The fun's gone. Like the fun of winning, it seemed more like we have to get the Super Bowl now. We're running out of time. The budget's coming up soon. We got to get this done now. And I think that took a lot of the joy out of it. I think for the fans and the team. Maybe you guys disagree, and you feel free to. I'm totally fine with that. But like, um, for me, I just didn't have fun anymore. It was like, okay, we won the game. Now we got to win the next game. We got to win the next game. We got to go win the next game. Like we got to get home field advantage, stuff like that. And then we actually got home field advantage, and it didn't even matter in the end. Um, so there you go. Sorry, that probably didn't really answer your question, Randy, but
Well, you called it unanswerable. So Dan, let's see if you can come up with something. Where do you think the team came up short, or what was the biggest? What aspect of the team fell furthest from expectations? Maybe that's a better way to ask.
So I do think it does start with coaching. Now I don't think it's a fireable offense for the head coach or the coordinators, but I do think, when you play a playoff game as big as that and it seems like you have no energy, I feel like you got that's got to be on the coach. Because it just seems like they didn't even like, not to say they didn't care, but it just seemed like they didn't have that energy that they did week 1 against the Rams, or week 2 against the Titans, like early in the season. I do agree with Jared. It does, when everyone expects a Super Bowl, it does devalue week 12 win against the Jets, or whatever, games like that. It does devalue that as a fan, I would say, because you're looking forward to the Super Bowl. But I think it does fall on coaching. I think that was a big reason why they lost last year in the playoffs, and I think it's a big reason this year, to not have your guys ready in that situation. And I think on offense as well, I think they were kind of relying on Josh Allen too much. So I definitely think they're going to need to add some pieces to the offense as well.
All right. Well, I mean, we can go through all the different holes. We need obviously a little more depth than defensive back if we're going to have the injuries we had this year. We have a linebacker. Is Edmunds is going to be able to stick around after the Milano contract? The defensive line we already talked about. You already sunk all the draft capital that you have there, and that doesn't seem to be panning out. And free agency may not solve your problems, it turns out. The offensive line, I don't know. I have a hard time. I think we still haven't recovered from Eric Wood's injury. Morse has been a very good center when he's played, but he misses a lot of games. And without that consistent leadership at center, it just hasn't been the same. Eric Wood has his absence has demonstrated his value so much, at least in my perspective. A wide receiver core. We have a offense centered around a downfield passing game with not very strong threats downfield after Stefon Diggs. And we've talked all season long about the lack of running back. So we can go through and talk about the holes in the depth chart, but I don't think this is secrets to anyone. So I'll just shorten it with one last question for each of you. What position do you think the first pick for the Bills is in the draft? Jared, start with you.
Believe it or not, safety. I have a weird feeling Poyer is going to leave the team, or Edmunds. So I guess it's really depends on that one, to be honest. Like I could either easily see one of those two not being on the team anymore. I have a hard time seeing them keeping both men. So, but I have a weird feeling it's going to be safety, and they might tag Tremaine Edmunds or something. I'm not even sure. So, if Poyer leaves, that's where you're going to want to go. And not to mention, given all the damage we've had to the safety position this year, it's not a bad idea to just have somebody back there just to strengthen the area of the secondary. I mean, whenever Jaquan Johnson was seen in the game, like that just spelled loss. I mean, we can't keep doing that.
Dan, what position do you think the first round draft pick will be?
So I think given the fact that the Bills are drafting, I don't know, it's like
27.
27. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm not even 100%. I know it's later it's going to be later in the first round. So I think that definitely does change things. I'm no draft expert. I don't really know too many college guys, but we're definitely going to have holes on defense. Ideally, I'm hoping you can fill those holes. Resign either Edmunds or Poyer. I don't know. I don't think they'll resign both. They're definitely going to have holes there. I just think they've been adding to the defense consistently in the draft, early in the draft, the last few years, and it hasn't seemed like it's panned out too much. I think they need to try and go get some kind of playmaker. So I'm hoping they get a receiver, or if there's any explosive tight ends. I mean, tight end in the first round, he better be pretty good. But I'm hoping some kind of explosive playmaker, ideally on the offense.
Well, the Bengals formula of we have three receivers that are really hard to stop. You have three defensive backs that you can't stop them. Seems to be a pretty effective one right now. So maybe something the Bills look at. Jared. Oh no, we were going to ask you.
Well, I'll ask you, Randy. Wait, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot because you made me think of a question. Free agency. Do you see us filling anything there? You mentioned draft.
I mean, we have a lot of players who are up against their contracts. We're not going to be able to re-sign them all. So free agency is obviously going to have to be part of the equation this year, especially as we're going to be consistently drafting further and further down in the draft. I am not a fan, never have been, and I can't change my opinion now on trading up in the draft. So free agency definitely has to be the start of it. Maybe start being the jerk that starts putting in like trade sheet offers for restricted free agents, just like whatever creative things that we can try to get the best players and the best contracts, because it should also be a desirable place to play. That's one advantage of being good, having a fan base that is famously known to support, all the high-end special teams players that could find their spot on any roster that they so choose. You see Damar Hamlin situation and say, well, at least if anything happens to me on the bill, look at the support I'm getting for that fan base. So like those small, unmeasurable things, I think make a difference for those kind of players. So I think, free agency has to be a part of it. But without knowing who's even available yet, it's a very difficult conversation to try to navigate. So I was trying to spare you, the analysts, such a difficult question. But don't worry, Jared. I'll remember this next season because we will be back next season. We had a great time providing some content every year. The great thing about living in Buffalo is that we already live in the greatest city on earth. No one's moving anywhere. So by definition, we've always got next year, baby. And it's going to be a Super Bowl season for sure next time. And I predicted the season exactly right this year, so I can't be wrong. Thank you all so much from the bottom of our hearts, Buffalo Bills pregame. It's an honor and privilege to talk to you all for all your time and attention. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video because it's your last chance this season. And we'll see you for the draft preview. Woo! I didn't write anything down, so I have nothing to throw. Extemporaneous.
That gag never gets old.